The idea of exploring modernity in the 21st century is one that has run through almost all of my efforts to really understand how the shifts in sensibility that we put under the rubric of globalism, of electronics, is affecting architecture. And the opportunity to come and talk about it with practitioners, other educators, is extraordinary. So my first response was, here we're a group of people involved in similar enough activities so that we could start with common ground. And then we had enough time, and everything was taken care of, to really develop ideas, respond, move away from a conversation, see that person later in the day, pick up the train of thought. So my first response was, this is a very rare opportunity to have a thought that you can think and follow through, because our whole dynamic today is interruption, fragmentation, unfinished thoughts. Why didn't I say that to this person? I think one of the things that interests me in particular in terms of larger themes was almost some of the things that were implicit. So in other words, we talked about whether preservation was going to be putting things back, Humpty Dumpty the way he was, or whether it actually meant a resilient interrelationship between something that could change it and take it into the future. I mean, each one of those individuals who contributed their particular way of dealing with modernity, that struck me as tremendously important, because I don't any longer think that we can talk about a small group of intellectuals like Johnson had as being the influence. Henry Russell Hitchcock was my teacher. He and Philip Johnson, Alfred Barr, made this construct, the international style. That's not going to ever happen again, I don't think, with any validity. So you need all these voices that are speaking from different places, rather, I think, than, okay, let's see if we can codify it and get us to make this list. This is modernity, functional, no ornament, modern materials, all the things that they listed in the catalog from the international style. So what I came away with was the fact that each person had their own take on what modernity meant, what to do about it in the future. And I think that's what we need to pay attention to. When a paradigm shifts, it's because there's too much evidence that it can no longer contain what's going on. So I think that's what we saw. The paradigm of modernity could not, in its present form, contain all those views, and there are many, many more. So that, to me, is what I'm going to be mulling over, I'm sure I'm going to talk about with my graduate students next week. We hear so much about how we're in an interactive, participatory relationship to so many things, but when you examine what that means, it's a click on the screen and something changes, and then you click again, or there's a program or a game that you play, but it's all predetermined. So this sense of allowing the public to come into the space and then really explore it, experience it. I mean, think of most people's experience today. They don't experience anything like this. So that's to me what's so important about anything that's different. Because how can you imagine a future different from today if you've only experienced strip malls and highways? But if you go to a public property, quote unquote, and there's a rope that tells you you can't really do anything except shuffle by in a huge mob, then, that little spark of, wow, look at this. People, lived here. It was quiet. There wasn't a lot of stuff. And So I see its role in really exploring what is possible, how to use this space, bring students, you know, the McMansion thing, bring the industry in here, look at the problems that are facing design today, and whether we call it modernity. I think the whole style thing is part of the modern mentality of classifications. It didn't start till the 19th century. It's Darwinian. Let's line up all these structural features. They're all alike. Okay, then that's Gothic, and these rounded arches, and okay, that's Roman. It's not the way life is lived. So, you know, I don't see it as modernity. I see it as how can this stay alive and vital and move and change, not become artificial under a glass dome, hands off. Well, you know, there were moments when they didn't want to listen to each other because they were hearing something they didn't agree with. And that's what's really important, not let's all have the same idea. That's doing what Johnson and Hitchcock did. Here's a formula, you can do it, buy it, make your cake, make your modern house. So I think that was really important, that people were able to articulate differences. So even though they were the same profession, or they were dealing with the same pieces of architecture, they didn't have the same approaches. So that's what I think, you know, 10 people speaking long enough, you can begin to hear their differing perceptions.